I wondered why Tsong-kha-pa, in his commentary on Chandrakirti's supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle, which is what this selection is from, why suddenly he makes this comment. It's not that the meaning of the profound emptiness is not suitable to be the object of any awareness. Why did he interject this? What prompts this? The King of Meditative Stabilization Sutra brought up how many examples? Mirage, City of Scent Eaters, Magician's Illusions, and Dreams. So 4 examples. So is the context, see, talking about those examples, the meaning of those examples? He's saying that the meaning of those examples is not, no, that doesn't seem to fit here. Because in these examples, there's an appearance of something.
The phrasing of which are like signs of capacity to appear and manifest.
Yes.
Is there a sense, is that line in this context meant to give a sense of reasons of capacity, reasons proving, just like we say sign as a synonym or equivalent to reason or proof? Is it, in this context, meant to be taken in a similar way?
I don't think so. I think it just means that these things have the capacity to, what is it, appear, manifest, and what was the other word?
Yes, appear and manifest.
Appear and manifest, yes. Okay. So, I don't think it's talking about that. I think he's speaking to how some other group might take what's going on here. And I don't think it's Jonang. And I'm not confident that Tsong-kha-pa is referring to how Nyingma might take what's going on here. I think Tsong-kha-pa's like in the U.S. would say, with a baseball analogy, coming out of left field. Now, I don't even know why this is said coming out of left field. Just means coming off the wall, it said. When the baseball hits the wall, you can't quite tell where it's going to bounce. And so one has to guess. For instance, nowadays, people say, a lot of people say, emptiness, if you would just take this as, discounting what's already been said, emptiness is not suitable to be the object of any awareness. You just have to tune into emptiness. Emptiness doesn't mean anything. You just got to tune into the profound emptiness. After all, emptiness is empty of itself. Emptiness doesn't mean anything. Just open your mind to it. Emptiness is beyond everything. And when you figure out emptiness, when you just shut up and tune your mind into into it, everything will be solved. And I know this isn't the Jonang meaning, because when you read, many people would attribute this to Jonang, but this, when you read Jonang carefully, this is not the meaning of Sherp Jensen's long text. And I hesitate to say this is Mipam Gyatso's meaning. But this certainly is something that people attribute to Nyingma and attribute even to Jonang, I imagine, but certainly attribute to Nyingma. It is not suitable to be the object of any awareness. Why do they say that? And because awareness, mind, immediately makes you think of subject and object. And emptiness is beyond, the actual realization of emptiness is beyond all subject and object. As Tsong-kha-pa himself says, in non-dual realization, you cannot express how it is experienced in non-dual realization exactly as it is. It's beyond all expression. But as Tsong-kha-pa himself says right here, through delineating it by means of the correct view and by meditating on the meaning of the reality that has been delineated, it can be taken as an object of the mind. You know, he's talking in terms of subject and object. But he does say in this very same text, when a bird flies through the sky, there are no tracks. You know, when a bird walks, you know, on the earth, there are tracks. But when a bird flies through empty space, there are no tracks. You might say it flew from here to there, but there are no tracks. For instance, at my place in Virginia, there's a pond over at my neighbor's place, and there's a pond that my neighbors made on my place. One of my neighbors felt I should have a pond, and he made a small pond. And another neighbor from over there, this neighbor was here, and another neighbor was there, and he felt I should have a bigger pond. And in fact, one of my friends thought, that pond's not big enough. So, this neighbor made a bigger one, made a bigger dam. I don't know if I paid the first neighbor. I paid the second neighbor. So the geese who came down from Canada, right? They flew down from Canada to our ponds. The geese would fly from over there to over here, and I'd point. They flew from there to here. But there were no tracks, you see. So Tsong-kha-pa points to that, I'm making a joke, points to that fact, that you can't point in space. There aren't any tracks. So when you experience direct perception of emptiness, you can't explain it. You're tongue-tied. He doesn't use that term, but in English we say tongue-tied. You try to explain, but the vocabulary is of subject and object. But you see, there's a lot of explaining that's done also. But when you come down to it, you can't. So, one can understand why in Buddhism and in non-dual Vedanta especially, Shankara, says you just plain can't put it in dualistic language. So you can see why somebody says, why it's often said, the meaning of the profound, whether you call it emptiness or not, is not suitable to be the object of any awareness. And indeed, in Jonang, Sherpa Gyaltsen says, the emptiness that is explained in the usual Madhyamaka, the usual middle way school, is a trifling emptiness. You could say it's a pathetic emptiness. It's not the great emptiness. So maybe that's what Tsong-kha-pa is referring to here. And Tsong-kha-pa often interrupts what he's saying to take a swipe at Sherpa Gyaltsen, the chief expositor but not founder of Jonang. That's what I imagine that's the left field, to use the baseball analogy, that Tsong-kha-pa is coming from. Through delineating it, and so Tsong-kha-pa is making his case, etc., in that sentence. Therefore, it is also not a vacuousness, that cannot be practiced during the path. There's plenty to practice, and about which there's nothing to be known and nothing to be realized. Longchenpa does make statements like this. And of course there are statements like this in Zen, which have their own profundity, which are like a slap in the face. Especially to someone who has studied and practiced a lot within the Nyingma tradition, or within, I say, the Zen tradition, the Chan tradition. Then, so it's the commentator, of which I am one, duty to say, hey, what is the author up to here? And I've just said what I think Tsong-kha-pa is up to here. Then, the objection. If this ascertainment, so now you see the objection that Tsong-kha-pa is dealing with still has something to do with reflections and so forth. Tsong-kha-pa is still within his topic, no question. The whole section is on reflections and so forth. So, reflections and so forth. Is it the time to turn to the 8 examples? The 8 examples. I have to sift through. You know, you need to sift through, please. The emails I've sent you. Now, the place where I could find the 8 examples was in Maps, Giant Shiba's Great Exposition of Tenets within the Mind-Only School. There are 8 examples, the famous 8 examples: magician's illusions, mirage, dreams, reflections. So what's being used here, the first one here, is the 4th. Hallucinations, echoes, moon reflected in water. Not the moon in the sky, of course, reflected in water, emanations. A great one for me is the moon reflected in water. I was tutoring 3 boys when I came back from my trip on a freighter as a passenger on a freighter to Tahiti. When I came back, don't get me started telling that story. In more or less upstate New York, but mid-state New York State, mid-state New York. I was tutoring 3 boys, and the father was at that time, he was somebody who auctioned off the contents of estates. And the family itself lived on an estate. I'm sure it was an estate that the family bought. They must have sold the contents and bought the house. It was huge. I think it had 33 rooms or something like that. And the family was, I think it had 5 boys. And 2 had already moved out and married. And I had a rather huge room with its own bathroom. You pass through the bathroom to get to the room. And anyway, it had a big piece of land. And one night I was walking and I saw the moon. And it was actually the reflection of the moon in the water. And I mistook the reflection of the moon in their pond for the actual moon. So I had a case where the reflection of the moon in the water I took to be the moon, the actual moon. The pond was big enough so that I saw the moon. It had all the characteristics of the moon. And eventually, when I got close enough, I saw that it wasn't the moon. So here, the reflection of the moon appeared to be the moon. And the reflection in the mirror, reflections, the 4th one, is a case where, all of us have had the experience of seeing your face in a mirror, especially, in a restaurant or in a airport, where you didn't realize that it was even your own face. You think it's somebody else. You don't haven't you seen your own reflection and thought, who's that old fart? You've never... Or, yeah, who's that weird person? You know, I hope I never get like that, or, you know, or if you're handsome enough, you know, not old enough, you think, wow, that's an interesting person. You know, I wonder who that is. I don't know. It happens. Or that's another section of the restaurant, right? Let's check out the seating over there. Never mind yourself, right? I get the shocks on myself. But certainly restaurants or seating places in the airport. Oh, that area doesn't seem to have many people. I'll check that out. I don't want to sit with a lot of people. Or that area seems to have a lot of interesting people. Dreams, no question. Taking them to be actual places. I'm working backwards now. Magicians, illusions, we discussed last time. Echoes. Wow, how many times we're mistaking echoes to be, I don't wander around that much anymore. Other people's voices? Yeah, easy enough. Emanations, or we discussed last time, you know, some jerk magician putting on a show and getting worried. They're going to slice up. Okay, and in this case, in a system that doesn't have an external world, all of these being used as examples for how you can have functioning consciousnesses without an external world. You know, it's an echo, and you perceive it as an external sound. You know, but it's just the reverberation, hallucination. You have a hallucination, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So these are all interesting reflections and perhaps helpful to, you know, a mirage. We're driving along in a car on a hot macadam road, and you see water up ahead. I was just thinking in Tibet, you know, you take a drive up north, and you get out, and you see it's actual water, and you say, oh, we walk 15 minutes and we'll get to that lake. You walk 15 minutes and the lake's still 15 minutes away. You walk 15 minutes more and it's still 15 minutes away. That's an actual lake. You do that several times and it's still 15 minutes away. What's that? It's a time mirage. It's a space mirage. It's a calculation mirage. And after a while, we gave up. I met a guy who went down to a lake, and it was just hopeless. You know, it was way down. The lake was in the valley, but it was a valley. It was down there. It wasn't like, and he couldn't get back up. You know, it was another day to get back up. Miscalculation, whatever. Okay. So, what's an example? An example is something that's easier to read than easier to realize than what's being exemplified. So, if the example is already known in the world to have something fake about it, then that would make it easier. Now, if you realize emptiness with respect to the example, then look at what Aryadeva says. Now, before we read the objection, look at what Aryadeva says. Whoever is a viewer, that means a person who views, one thing is without inherent existence. That means if you understand the emptiness of one thing, then in the second line, you are a person who views everything as without inherent existence. And Tsong-kha-pa, after the stanza, explains that it means not that right then and there you understand explicitly all emptinesses. It just means that you can, without any other reasoning, just turn your mind to anything else and you'll understand its emptiness. If you really understand the emptiness of one thing, you can just turn your mind to any other topic, any other thing, and you'll immediately understand its emptiness. You don't need to reflect on the previous reasoning even. You don't need any new reasoning. You can just turn your mind to that thing and you'll understand its emptiness. So that would mean that if you really understand the emptiness of the example, then you can, you just turn your mind to the actual topic that's being exemplified, and you'll immediately understand it. Now that sort of defeats the purpose of the example. You take some easy, may I say, easy-ass thing where it's easy to understand the emptiness, and then you just apply it. You not apply it, you just how can it be? I'm not going to be able to solve this. One thing that happens is you're going to dig a hole for yourself and one thing on LinkedIn, I used to have a picture of him behind, like where His Holiness is here. And I used to be able to point and say, he used to say, now this, we'll pretend on LinkedIn is like a little bit over there. He used to say, well, the function of the example is, because it's easier, is to learn like how the sevenfold reasoning works. Like with the chariot, with your car. If I would add, if you don't much care about your car, like, but even my old car, 1996 Subaru in Virginia, but I do care about it. I don't want to have to buy a new car, but not care that much, okay? It's, if I'm meditating on myself, I care far less, Self is the not the not thing of all the problems of cyclic existence, right? It's the center of all the crap. The pride and jealousy and miserliness and hatred and, my desires are blocked, somebody else gets the chocolate cake. It's the, you name it. So, you see, now on LinkedIn, says with the car, chariot, you can apply the reasoning and use it and make a lot of progress. And even though you don't fully realize, you make a lot of progress in applying the sevenfold reasoning with regard to the chariot, the car, or some such thing. And then apply it to yourself. And maybe, using His Holiness's talking about, if we use the word serendipity, I don't know if that's the word, moving back and forth, sometimes the chariot, the car, sometimes the person. And His Holiness will say, jump right in, you're doing refuge, and the person, person comes up, and apply, immediately as a beginner even, right? Some people say, oh, you gotta, do refuge and attain belief in the guru and so forth. And His Holiness says, oh, jump right in and do some meditation on emptiness and do compassion and do this, do that, do this, and they'll all work to help each other, see? And so if you apply that, then you do some on the chariot, some on the person, some on other people, some cultivation of compassion, and of course, as Hopkins says, compassion has a lot of wisdom in it. Don't bifurcate wisdom on one side and compassion on the other side. Compassion breaks down a lot of the barriers to opening up to wisdom, Even those who teach about compassion say that. Merit opens the way to wisdom. Why? Because compassion has a lot of wisdom force in it. So what His Holiness says is built on that. Doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that. Making progress here, progress that. And telling stories. His Holiness tells a story of someone who finally developed some faith in the Guru by later on developing some wisdom. So, insisting on developing faith in the Guru early on, almost a waste of time. I'm sorry. Sorry to have said that. But, and finally the tears coming. Wow. Something. Now I'm late. Very helpful to me. He was also a pain in the ass. I told you the story about his reciting from heart a passage from this very text that this section is drawn from, and it's so striking me. I fell against the door as I was leaving the room, carrying the tape recorder. It fell against the door. Anyway, so I forget the place that I'm diverting from.
Is full of understandings. Whoever's a viewer.
Yes, but what is the sense? The viewer one, viewer of all, yes. And what is the sense? Why did I divert into all of this? Okay. If you can't...
The example being the easy way or the simpler way of understanding.
Yes. And Nolan Langdon's describing that you don't actually realize the emptiness of inherent existence of the example. Now, Tsong-kha-pa does say you do, but Langdon is saying, you don't. That's quite interesting. Yes, and what Nolan Langdon said makes a lot of sense. So, okay. So, to go back, the objection you can see, now the objection is much more gross. The objection is that if you're realizing that a face is empty of being a face, and that means you're realizing emptiness, well, you're not. We all realize that the reflection of a face in a mirror does appear to be a face, but we who are a little bit educated, which is called being versed in language, you see, that's called being versed in language. That means, and we might better translate that in more free-flowing English as being a little bit educated. But I got a little bit educated, frankly, in my family's big wash basin. It was a little bit bigger than quite a bit bigger than a regular wash basin upstairs in my family's house. When my mother would bathe me in that, I just thought it was another person in the mirror. I didn't know it was a mirror. I thought it was somebody else over there. And then at one point, I realized it was a reflection of myself, okay? And it wasn't based on language. It was just based on touching the mirror and realizing it was a reflection of, that I was controlling what was appearing, okay? Didn't take language. I moved, and, I'm controlling that. So, So the word is, in Tibetan, is dajang, dajang. Jang, versed or acquainted with symbology, might cover that, what I experienced, versed in symbology. So that might be a better translation that would cover that was a symbol that, if I wanted to cover my experience there. I do think that they're probably talking about language, but who knows? It would take somebody who had my experience to say whether da there. Da, the word is in Tibetan language would be ge. I don't know what the parameters of da and ge are. If da would cover what I was experiencing. But I can tell you from my own experience that I vividly remember. Okay. But anyway. Now, so, and it's helpful to see that up in the objection, that reflection of a face is empty. See, the word empty has many meanings. An empty glass of, an empty glass, empty of water, empty of milk, empty of tea, whatever we want. Empty has a common meaning, and empty of inherent existence, the same word. The temple is empty of clerics, of monastics. The temple is empty of monastics. The temple is empty. Where are the monastics? Well, the temple's empty. They're somewhere else. See, the word empty is used in the Lankavatara Sutra. So there's a famous quote. The word empty is used. And it said, I think it said, that's not what we're talking about here, or something like that. It's not that kind of emptiness. And if the estimate that reflections and so forth are empty of what they appear to be, is not a realization of their absence of inherent existence, how could these be suitable as examples of the absence of inherent existence? Good question. So then that leads to explaining kinds of examples. And it's Tsong-kha-pa answers it with some complexity. And we should leave this for next time. And it's all very interesting, and sometimes it's this way, sometimes it's that way, and it's in Maitreya's ornament for the clear realizations. It turns out to be not just clear realization, as I translated it in this text. It's ornament for the clear realizations. And there are 8 clear realizations. So ornament for the clear realizations is how it's taken. So I improved my translation of the title of Maitreya's text to ornament for the clear realizations, for the clear realizations. All right. See you next time. It's a lot of fun.